Oh, we have Rachel Korb here. I am so excited about this session. I find it so funny that we literally had our morning for languages community session before this, and we literally talked about this topic without like it wasn't intentional, but like how do you manage your energy and your boundaries and all of those questions, which I'm sure we're gonna hop and dive into today. So, Rachel, maybe you can do a quick intro. I don't think anyone here knows you necessarily. So, like a bit about your background and how did you end up working with this topic specifically as well? As it's something that obviously all of us here are very interested in.
Yeah, I'll definitely jump into that. I have that as one of my slides, so I'll share that as we go into it. So I'll share now. I am getting over a cold for all you all, so I might be like having a cough every every now and then. Also, if anyone wants to put on their videos, I love to see your faces. If you're doing stuff or you're just like, I'm screened out, totally cool. We are a small group today. It will be interactive. So I'll ask things for like chatting or like unmuting. Since we're so small, we could also do some unmuting if people want to chat about things too. So let me share my screen. Cool. Can everyone see it okay? All right, perfect. So welcome to Design a Life That Energizes You. This is, we're really just touching the surface today, right? We're not going to be going super deep. We're going to be looking at a few areas to start to get you thinking a little bit about this. But before we dive into the specifics, I want to share a little bit about who I am. I think you've all heard already. I'm Rachel. And so what do? I do a lot of things. I'm a dream life designer. So I work with clients to design a life that they love from the inside out. We do a lot around somatics, nervous system, mindfulness, and then how does that move into holistic lifestyle design? Body mind mentor. So again, this goes back to a lot of the somatic nervous system work that I do with my clients, and mindfulness that I do with my clients. And then I'm also a sea lover. So outside of this square that you see me in, I tend to be at the water, in the water, around the water, big into snorkel and scuba and all of those fun things. But what's my journey? How did I get here? So my professional story started in San Francisco, scaling operations in an ed tech startup. We grew 11.5x in just under 2 years. So needless to say, it was a super intense period, but it was also disrupted by this big dream I had, which was to move to Spain, which is where I currently am in Barcelona. And so I came here with a savings, no work permit, but really with a lot of persistence and effort. I went on to have a lot of success on paper. So I landed senior leadership roles in remote startups. So moving from ops into people and culture. I really built this like beautiful life here in Barcelona, apartment by the beach, like amazing friends, just like a strong community. I also have a wonderful husband named Chinmay and a cat named Raymond. And then really kind of hitting all of the financial goals I wanted. So I had all of these external markers of success, but something else was happening at the same time. My body was sending me now what I see very clearly as warning signals: burnout, high functioning anxiety, insomnia. And it culminated in a breakout of shingles that I initially thought was from a medusa in Spanish, a jellyfish, to very quickly learn it was related to the level of chronic stress that I was keeping within my body. And so as that was happening, there was also this deeper question of like, is this really it? Is this all there is to life? Because I had achieved everything I had wanted, but I wasn't fulfilled. And so I realized this was my crossroads. My lifestyle was not sustainable and I needed to make a change. So this led me on a 2 year journey, healing, wellness, coaching, and just really changing my approach to work as well as leadership. And so like kind of backing out with a decade of experience in startups and then 20 years of experience in mindfulness, nervous system regulation, and somatics, I decided to go coaching full time. And so that's where I use this holistic approach of bridging what I call body mind connection. So not mind body, but actually starting with the body first, and then life design so that you can really design a life that supports itself. So we look at what does success look like for you? How do we make it sustainable? But then how can you also feel fulfilled in it versus like, I always need that next thing, right? Because that's what I work with a lot of high achieving clients. And they're like, well, I'll be satisfied when. And I'm like, but will you really be satisfied when you achieve that? They're like, probably not. Then I'll have the next thing. So it's like, how can we actually have that satisfaction while still doing the things we want to do and growing and expanding as a human? So that's a little bit about what I do. I also have a Substack, which currently I'm not posting on a lot, but I put free videos, resources, and guides just really to inspire as many people as possible to design a life that they love from the inside out. So that's something I can share if people are interested. So that's enough about me. That's what got me to where I am. Energy work. You'll see why this matters. It's going to go into nervous system stuff, lifestyle designs there. So before we jump into it, I'm curious. I have a question for you, so you can pop this in the chat of, why does designing your life around your energy matter? What would that change for you if you actually did that and in a way that felt good?
I was just thinking about this before, and for me, I noticed like there was a time when I was actually planning my life or doing everything based on my energy, and I was just so much more productive in general because I measure
Yeah,
myself
more
in
productive.
productivity. But like I
Okay.
was just actually making so much more, creating so much more when it was energy based versus like schedule based or calendar
Yeah.
based.
Yeah, so more productivity, associativity, to feel seen, safe, etc. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm going to talk about some benefits for it. I was curious why it matters to you. So if you haven't answered here, just take a moment to think about like, why does this really matter for me? Um, so there's more reasons than what I'm going to share, but the first is higher stress resilience. So when you're consistently aligning with your energy cycles, this improves emotional balance, the ability to regulate, reduces anxiety, reduces depression risk, and it can help build resistance to stressors. And so a key part of this is it's supporting optimal nervous system functioning. Second is better performance. So what we've learned is like it helps with cognition, memory, decision making, can be sharper when you're working with your brain's natural peaks versus against the natural peaks. Improve productivity. So back to you, Maria. Like you'll feel more refreshed, energetic. You can be productive in those moments when the energy works for you versus trying to force that productivity or motivation. And then you also have a stronger ability to adapt. So when you have genuine rest and genuine recovery, you boost resilience and then have that sustainable performance because you're not just like always operating on like an empty gas tank, if you will. And then lastly, it helps prevent burnout or at least mitigate it. So instead of like this always being on, energy sinking disrupts the burnout cycle of overexertion, breakdown, and then temporary recovery, right? That's what we tend to do for years at a time. Whereas this is like when I start to design my life around energy, I don't need to worry about burnout as much anymore. Pardon me. So where does it start? Body mind connection. So for people here, I would love if you want to drop in the chat or you can unmute, just like how would you define body mind connection? Leaning into what my gut tells me. Oh, I love that. Not over analyzing. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like really dropping into the body. Cool. Yeah. And so I want to talk also, Maria, listening to what's needed for the whole. I love that. Yeah. So I talk a lot about like neck up society where we live in over analytic like logic brain. And so when we think about body mind connection, I still connect it to mind body connection, which is roughly like it's a bi-directional relationship between our mental and emotional states as well as our physical. So this means your thoughts, your feelings, your attitudes, they influence your body's function and well-being, but also the body, both well-being and experiences impacts the mental and emotional states. And so the question is, why does this matter? Why does this matter when it comes to energy? And it matters because body mind connection operates through the nervous system. So when our energy cycles are aligned, the nervous system functions more smoothly and it improves things like emotional stability. So our ability to experience, express, and regulate emotions, cognitive clarity, stress resilience, and just our overall health. And so maybe just a quick like thumbs up or thumbs down in the chat, like who's familiar with the nervous system and how it works on a high level. Okay. We'll stay at high level today for sure. Okay, so we've got some knowledge around it. Cool. Well, we're gonna do a quick intro. Um, so if you haven't heard about it, or maybe you've heard about it in a different way, this will be another perspective to look through the nervous system. So I want you to imagine you have a colorful inner world that represents your nervous system states. There's this horizontal spectrum with three distinct zones: our iceberg, our calm waters, and the waves. And so these are the lands, like the inner landscapes of your body, of your inner world. And so I want to start with the iceberg. This represents your dorsal vagal state. So this is what researchers call the mobilization system. Maybe you've heard of it as freeze or fawn or shutdown response. And so when this state hits, you can't fight it, you can't flee, you just shut down. So you might feel numb, you might feel foggy, completely exhausted, or you just totally withdraw. And this can often show up when you're feeling overwhelmed with work demands, maybe like the sensation of being constantly behind or just burnt out from like pushing too hard to meet the standards you've set for yourself. And so common like coping we see around this is like scrolling social media mindlessly, binging TV shows, isolating yourself, using food or drinks to soothe emotions. And so I just want you to reflect for a moment. Do you recognize when you slip into this iceberg state? You don't need to add anything, Chad, if you don't want to, but just for you, when does this tend to happen? Is it after a long day of back-to-back meetings, or maybe when you're lacking clarity around career direction or life direction, or just too many requests if you have kids, like, Mom, I need this, or Dad, I need that. Yeah. And maybe if you've got a note, you can just jot that down of, this is when I recognize it, or not. Is it bad to be there? Ooh, perfect question, Renee. So the dorsal vagal state is our oldest survival mechanism. Well, it evolved long before flight or fight. So sometimes it is necessary. And we can actually, like, if we look at this spectrum where the blue meets kind of the turquoise, this is where we can do rest and recovery. So we don't want to get stuck on the far end. Sometimes we need to go into it because we are exhausted from pushing for too long. We're going to talk about that in a second, but it's not bad to be there. So what's most important is not getting stuck there, because when you get stuck there, this is when we tend to disconnect from ourselves and from others. Like disassociation is very connected to this state. Yeah. So I'd say when we think about anything for the nervous system, there is no bad. It's just how can I return back to a more regulated state instead of getting stuck in one. So yeah, the too long is the key word in terms of what you said, Vinay. So let's move to the center. This is like beautiful turquoise blue zone, and there's a woman floating, right? She's just like taking in the calm waters, and this represents your ventral vagal state. So this is sometimes called the social engagement system. I prefer to call it connection. And so in this place, this is like where you float effortlessly. You feel connected, you feel creative, you feel calm, you feel curious, you feel present, joyful, compassionate. And so your thoughts tend to flow more smoothly. Your breathing tends to be more deep and even. And you can really kind of navigate the currents of life that comes up. This is also the place where your intuition can show up more easily and where you can make decisions from a place of clarity, more confidence rather than in fear or reactivity. And so this is where we do want to spend most of our time. And so another reflection for you again is, when do I naturally find myself in this turquoise state? Is it when I'm engaged with work that really energizes me or aligns with my values? Is it connecting with loved ones? Is it being in nature? Yeah, very of nature. Yeah. So just taking a moment to notice, when do I find myself naturally entering this state? And if you don't, that's okay too, right? This is something that's really common. So like I said, there's no right or wrong, but knowing that this is where we want to get more and more over time. Yeah, when more things are going right versus wrong. Yeah. And I don't skip out on exercise or intentional movement. Yeah. So lack of noise and nature sounds. And having nature sounds, I'm assuming. Yeah. Cool. Well, let's go into the last one. So this is on the right side. This is like this vibrant orange zone. And there's like these big waves with this like cool surfer chick and this bright sun. And this represents your sympathetic state. So this is called the mobilization system. You might know it as fight or flight response. This is where a lot of people tend to sit. If any of you, I'm not sure your work backgrounds, my backgrounds are in startups. Pretty much every single one of my clients is majority of the time in fight or flight state. And so the way that I like to think about this is like, imagine a storm is coming. So like these seas, gentle waves become big ones. And in this scenario, you need to get to shore. And so your body's on high alert. It's ready for action. Your heart begins to race. Your breathing shallows. It quickens. Your muscles tensen up. And your mind starts to race with anxious thoughts, right? Thinking, how am I going to get to shore before this wave takes me out? when we think about this, maybe in work terms, this often shows up as that feeling of being constantly on, right? Checking your email first thing in the morning, last thing at night, saying yes to projects when you're already overloaded, or just feeling that persistent worry that like you're not doing enough, and maybe more deeply, like I'm not being enough. And so, how you show up anywhere is how you show up everywhere. This is the work side, but it's probably also happening outside of work too in different ways. And so we're just going to take another moment to reflect for ourselves. Like, when was the last time you felt these signals in your body? Was it before a presentation, before a difficult conversation, facing tight deadlines? This morning. Yeah. So maybe thinking, Maria, about like what was happening in that moment, right? In the morning. What were those things that activate the fight or flight in the nervous system? Yeah. When on others people's timelines. Yeah. Yeah. And so one thing I want to say about this state is it's also not inherently bad. So it's actually a really important state for us. It's evolved to help you respond to challenges like getting urgent things done. The challenge is when you stay here too long, this is what eats away at your energy reserves. And what we've been learning through research is it actually accelerates our biological aging at a cellular level. So for any startup folks here, there's like a common joke, like 1 year in a startup is like aging 5 years somewhere else or more. There's some actual like literal truth to that, that our cells are aging faster because of the amount of stress that we're putting the body under and we're not recovering. So when we think about designing a life that energizes you, it starts with Vinay, you have a question or
Oh
comment?
yeah, I do actually. If you
Yeah.
don't mind, just going back to that first or previous slide. Um,
Yeah.
One, like I like the way that you outlined this and presented it because I find it to be a helpful way to understand.
Mm,
And then I know with any model, like obviously it's easy to make suggestions or pick holes or whatever, but I wanted to just ask, since you're knowledgeable here,
mm,
the way that it's presented here is, you know, a spectrum, right? And
yeah.
if I look at this without knowing anything about it, and you see, I don't know as much as you, it would make me think that I have to pass through the nice calm blue space to get from the right to the left. And in
Mm,
my personal life, either for myself or for people around me, it feels much more like the far left and the far right are actually connected. So it's like a circle,
yeah.
and those two are quite close, and the connection's sort of like
Yeah.
on the other side of the globe. Is that also how you've experienced it, or is this actually how it works in the body?
No, excellent point. So this is more just showing how you can move back and forth, but it is like if you get stuck in fight or flight, you can drop right down into hypoarousal or the freeze state. So it could maybe function also as like a circle of moving back and forth. And so like I mentioned with the rest and recovery, how that's where the turquoise meets the blue. When we think about like great engagement levels, it's where it's the orange starts to meet the turquoise. Um, but if you're up in that like far right side and you're there too long, what happens? You withdraw. You're down in that iceberg state because your body's just like, I can't do this anymore. I am exhausted. And so you're essentially, it's the same thing of animals, right? When they think they're going to die, they play dead. They're like, your nervous system responds in the same way. It has not evolved to understand like this isn't a real threat. It's just like I need to withdraw because I need to save myself. And so it gives
Right.
a sense of safety, but it's also related to energy level of I just physically can't do this anymore. Which is when we think about burnout, a lot of burnout happens because we're in that big wave orange state for a really long time. And then we crash down into the iceberg state. Yeah. But I wouldn't say you go through connection. You go straight to freeze most of the time. Yeah. Excellent question. Also a good suggestion for how to visualize it. I like it. Cool. So yeah, when we start to think about how we want to design our life to energize ourselves, it starts with the nervous system, right? So back to what we were just talking about, like if you're in the fight or flight the majority of the time, you're going to be exhausted. You'll end up in the freezer shutdown at some point. If you're in the freezer shutdown, most of the time you tend to be withdrawn, lethargic. It's like you really struggle to do the simplest things and you just tend to feel pretty disconnected. And so, what we want to do is design our life in a way that optimizes for returning to the connection state. We're not going to go into what do we do with the nervous system to do that. We're going to be focusing on more how do I design a lifestyle around energy. We could do we could do several workshops just on the nervous system stuff. Um, But I think one thing that's really important to mention is you will, throughout the day, you move through the different states. And that's totally normal. That's a part of a well-functioning nervous system. The key is that ability to return to this regulated turquoise state and spending more time in that state. So I won't go into depth around it, but essentially what we'll do is over time, as you return more and more, we start to rewire our brain as well as our nervous system, and we expand what's called our window of tolerance. That's what allows us to stay in the nervous system, like the connection nervous system state more often, as well as return to it. Yeah, Maria, go ahead.
I just thought of a question. So is it, I noticed this post-COVID. So before COVID, I used to live in big cities. I had zero problems. Again, I'm aware I really did have problems, but I wasn't aware of them with like
Mm.
noise. I actually loved it, or at least I thought cognitively that I loved it. I was like, I love the
Yeah.
busy, workaday life. I love when there's a lot of noise and stuff happening. And then during COVID, I went to like full freeze as everyone did, kind of like silence. I went back to Finland. I lived in one room for 3 months by myself.
Mm.
And after that, I could never return. So what I feel like my experience of it was that my nervous system got back into calm, back into connected, back into, neutral for the
Mm.
first time. Sure. And then once I actually got familiar and comfortable within that connected space, it became much more difficult for me to tolerate either of the extremes. Whereas
Mm.
before, both very fluently, but I probably didn't spend any time in the connected space.
Yeah.
So I'm just really curious if there's anything that you might want to kind of elaborate on that. Is that an experience that might have some kind of foundation, or is it just my kind of gut feeling about it?
Yeah, so there's a lot around this. I think high level, some things I can say is like we look at like what we found is like the more time you spend in nature, the nervous system regulates more. We're also talking about like sensitivity. And so a dysregulated nervous system tends to be more sensitive to the five senses. So if your nervous system tends to have a smaller window of tolerance, sounds are going to bother you more. Bright lights are going to bother you more. That said, your environment's still really important. So it's like finding what works for me. So I went through a period too where um, I was really struggling with like oversensitivity to sounds and just people. Barcelona is the most densely populated city in Europe, and so sorry, I keep looking to the side because I have like so many things open, but I'm looking at you, your faces. It took me like a while where I had to retrain my nervous system to feel a sense of safety because what's happening when we go into the freeze or the fight or flight is the nervous system is sending a message up the vagus nerve into the brain saying danger, danger. And so then the body that it sends it back down into the body and the body responds. And so what I'd say is loud sounds, we're born with a fear for that, right? But like just sounds or a lot of sounds to an extent can be impacted by what our window of tolerance is. So as I've grown my window of tolerance, I've noticed sounds I don't think about as much anymore. Um, or I don't notice them. I can tune them out a little bit more easily. But I'd say that really varies by the person because our window of tolerance is changing. So it's heavily shaped by our upbringing. And if we're in safety or in danger, a lot of the time as a child, again, a lot of this isn't logical, um, or not logical. It's like your parent not listening to and reading their phone while you're talking. Like that can send to a child like you are not safe, right? So it's like we've got all these micro things that really shape our nervous system, but then in the day to day, it's hydration, the amount of sleep we've had, movement we've had, the diet we're eating, especially for women, like your menstrual cycle and how your hormones impact that. Men, like male physiology also has it, but it's on a 24-hour cycle. So it's a little bit different. But I would say like when you can really tap into that like connection state and you build that window of tolerance, your tolerance for what's going on around you becomes much higher. But it doesn't mean that you should put yourself in those situations. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you find like I just feel much better in nature, then spend more time in nature. Like reduce it. Like we have neighbors who play cumbia super loud, and I'm like, I could listen to that, but I don't want to listen to that. So I close my window, right? And And it's like I can tune it out now, but I choose not to because I'm like, I'd rather just like create the space that works better for my nervous system. I don't know if that answers your question, but those are like a few high level things. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, we're gonna go into our first activity. So it's called the energy audit. And this is based on the 12 dimensions of life design. So I just want to walk through what each one is quickly. We'll have it on the next slide where we'll actually do the activity. So we have the body. So this is our physical well-being, our diet, our sleep, something called body literacy. So the ability to listen to and understand the inner workings of our body, from things like heartbeat and hunger and breathing to like where emotions physically manifest in the body. Then we have mind. So this is intellectual engagement, your focus, memory, logic, really thinking more from the brain perspective. And then we have emotion. So this is how we experience, express, and regulate our emotions, right? This includes the emotions that feel good as well as emotions that might feel more difficult or when we're dealing with stress or anxiety or overwhelm. And then we have joy. So this is knowing what brings me joy. This could be my work. This could be hobbies. This could be family, friendships, something else. And then actually doing those things, not just knowing them, but actually doing them. And then we have growth. So this is growth in terms of me as a human being, my professional or my personal growth, but also can be learning new skills or gaining knowledge and experience. And then we have soul. So this is like a sense of meaning or purpose in my life. So I always say like, this is the thing that can like really fill you up, that helps you feel connected. This can show up in a lot of different ways. For some people, it is religion or spirituality. For others, it's being in nature. For others, it's their work gives them a deeper sense of purpose, or being a parent gives them a sense of purpose. Some people, it's their hobbies and their creative outlet that they have. And then we have social. So this is the quality of relationships that you have. So these are friendships as well as relationships with your coworkers, and then your greater community. And then we have family. So these are the relationships to your related or chosen family. And then love. So if you choose to have a significant other, platonic or romantic, whatever that looks like, this would be that one. And then we have contribution. So contribution could be a job, a calling, a job, a career, or a calling. Impact that you choose to have, and really how you contribute to something that's greater than yourself. And then we have environment. So these are the spaces and places where you choose to spend your time and your energy and how you interact with those spaces. And then lastly, we have wealth. And wealth for me is not just financial. It's thinking in the terms of abundance. So it could be financial, but it's also wealth of time, wealth of energy, wealth of relationships, wealth of other resources. Maybe it's wealth of choice or freedom. So we're going to do an audit. And something you might notice here is I do not have like a career specific dimension. And that is on purpose because everything is life. Like work falls in life. It's a big element of our lives and for many people. So as we go through this, we are going to be looking at it inside and outside of work. That's normal, but it's also thinking about the context of we're not going to be designing our life around work outside of work. We're going to be looking at these 12 dimensions so we have a more holistic lens. And so if you've got a piece of paper, you can just create a quadrant like this matrix where you've got inside work, outside work, energizing, and draining. If you don't have paper, you can just type this up like energizing inside work, energizing outside work, draining inside work, draining outside work. And so what we're going to do is take about 5 minutes, and I want you to just start, like we probably won't finish, but I want you to start listing out what energizes you versus what drains you in each of these 12 dimensions. And do recent, like the past week or so. We don't need to think about the past year or anything. I'd focus more on the recent. So I'll give a quick example. So for body, right? Starting with body, the energizing inside of work is walking meetings give me energy in my body. The inside of work draining, it's sitting for long hours and staring at a screen. Outside of work, the energizers for my body is going for a run, going to the gym, playing with my kids, prior to prioritizing quality sleep, having a morning smoothie, having a coffee. And maybe outside of work draining could be ordering out food regularly, or taking ibuprofen to push through a headache versus like actually maybe resting instead. So I'm gonna put on, actually, I don't know if I enabled it. I'll check and see. I'm gonna put on some music so you have like some nice tunes in the background. I might have to stop sharing for a second, but yeah, just start going through and filling out the list and just popping into the dimensions that really call most to you. And if you have questions, feel free to add them in the chat. I will take a look. Okay. Give me just a second. I'm actually going to stop sharing so I can reshare with some. Leave. Come on. All right. So we'll just start wrapping up with our last few that you notice. So if you haven't finished everything, that's totally okay. I would encourage you to come back after when you've got some more time, or maybe after today's session, you'll start to notice more like, ooh, what's bringing me energy? What's draining my energy? So feel free to either unmute or in the chat, maybe just drop in like, what's maybe something that surprised you as you were doing this energy audit, or maybe a trend or a theme that you noticed, maybe something else. Alignment comes with a cost. I'm very curious what that means for you, Maria.
Yeah, maybe I'll share. It's easier to say. It's this weird thing of like the more you understand and you know what really nurtures you and energizes you, and the more you notice how external situations are not necessarily aligned, the more difficult it becomes to kind of remain. And I think we talk a lot about it, especially in the kind of spiritual side of things. It's like when you kind of evolve and expand and grow in different directions, you lose things and you lose people and you lose situations. And like as I was writing these down, I also noticed that there are things that I know that will create like big changes. And while being intentionally and like aware of them, it actually comes with a cost that you need to kind of take your time with and, make sure that you're not just abandoning everything at once, but like how do you intentionally make the shift in a sustainable way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think right whenever we make these kinds of shifts, there are things we do need to let go, and that's okay. Because for us to gain, we also have to let go of things too. We don't have space to just keep adding. And so I see it as like maybe not as much of a cost. I call it the shedding process. So what are we shedding that no longer serves us to make space for what can serve us? And so in the moment, it feels like a cost for sure, right? It can be hard because we're letting go of identity or connection or different things that we've really become attached to. But it's how can I let these go because it will better serve for the thing that I want to bring in. Yeah. And yeah, Vinays is also quite interesting. So draining is more closely related to other people, and energize is more internally focused. That's a really cool to notice that. And like I would maybe think about like what's the internal to me that sounds like an internal tension, like almost a tug of war of what does that actually mean for me. But I'm not going to go into coaching right now. That's a coaching question, but I think it could be a really fun one to explore. What we're going to do now is we are going to move into mapping our energy spots. You've got the intellectual side of these energizers and drainers. Now we're going to do a guided practice where you can actually start to map your energy spots. What I mean by this is starting to notice where do these energizers or drainers physically manifest in the body, right? And when we do that, it helps the body recognize and remember these patterns so you can make faster, more intuitive decisions about your energy while also recognizing the nervous system state. Like, oh, my nervous system state's moving into a fight or fight response. This is maybe an energizer for me, but if I stayed in too long, it will become a drainer for me, right? That's something I see a lot is like something can be an energizer until a point, and then at some point it might be a drainer. So if you haven't done any kind of like guided mindfulness practices before, this might feel a little bit weird. That's totally normal. If you have fun with it. This is purely experimental. So I'd say like go as deep as you want. If at any point you're like, I'm done with this, you can always pull out. It's going to be about 5 minutes, maybe 10. And so I'll just guide you through that. And one thing I'll also mention is like, I'll invite you to close your eyes, but if you don't feel comfortable doing so, you can just allow a gaze towards the floor. So whatever makes you, right, going back to the nervous system, whatever makes your nervous system feel safe. So we'll just start by like finding a comfortable position. Can be sitting. Maybe you're like, I want to move and I want to lay down or I want to stand. Um, and then also if there's anything you need to get just 10% more comfortable, maybe you need to like stretch the body. You're like, oh, I've just been sitting all day. Like, you need to do some movement. Just do anything you need. to find that spot. And so we'll just begin by closing the eyes and finding the breath that's right for you. So not too fast, not too slow, just the right amount of air at just the right tempo. And you'll know when you found the breath that's right for you because you might feel a sense of relief or release in the body. And if you don't notice anything, that's okay too. And so as you settle into this breath that's right for you, just remind yourself, not only am I capable, but I'm willing to give this to myself. And now let your awareness turn inward, thinking of one of your top energizers from this past week, something that consistently filled you up. And remember being in that experience. Where were you? What did you see? Did you hear? Did you smell? What were you doing? Who are you with? And as you recall this energizing moment, just notice what happens in the body. Where do you feel expansion? Maybe lightness, warmth, or relaxation. Maybe your breath deepens or your shoulders soften. Maybe there's a gentle buzz of like aliveness somewhere in the body. Maybe you don't notice anything at all. That's completely okay too. But if you notice these sensations, just stay with the sensations for a moment. And now imagine having more of this energizer in your life. What would that feel like? Picture your day, your week, maybe your life with 20% more of this energy giving experience. Let the body feel into that possibility. And now take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And shift your attention, recalling one of the top energy drainers from this past week. What was happening? Where were you? Right? What did you see? What did you hear? What did you smell? What was maybe with you? And notice what happens in the body as you recall this draining experience. Or might you feel contraction or heaviness or tension? Maybe your jaw clenches or you feel a knot in your chest. Maybe a sinking in the stomach. Notice how this feels different from your energizer. And now imagine having less of this drainer in your life. Picture setting a boundary, maybe delegating, or removing it entirely. How does the body respond to that possibility? Now just take a moment to anchor both of these feelings, the expansion of the energizer, the contraction of the drainer. Just noticing this is your body's wisdom, giving signals around your energy patterns. Now I'll slowly begin to return to the physical space we're all in. Start by noticing your feet on the floor, where the body comes into contact with the surface supporting you. Maybe the temperature of the air on your skin, the texture of your clothing, the sounds around you. You can wiggle your fingers and your toes, maybe rock the head side to side. Take one deep anchoring breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and return to our shared space. Cool. So we'll just do a quick check-in with ourselves. I'm going to be conscious of time. Just noticing, like, and even if you want to jot it down, like, where did the energizer show up? What was the quality of that sensation in the body? And then where did the drainer show up? And what was the quality of that sensation of the body? Obviously, if you have questions too, like, feel free to ask. Well, thanks, Vinny. Yeah, cool. Well, now we're going to move into some of the energy rhythms in life design. So we're going to do another one in the chat because I really like making stuff interactive. So guess, how many energy rhythms do you think we have as human beings? Just pop a number in the chat that you think we have. 7? Okay. 3? 12? Okay. So we've got 5. 5 scientifically recognized human energy rhythms as of today. Today we're going to look at 4. And these 4 are really what matter most when it comes to life design. 49, I wish. No, that'd be so complex. We'll keep it simple for us. We'll keep it down closer to, I think 3 would be even nicer, be closer to Maria's number than the 5. But let's talk about the 4. So the first is the ultradian rhythm. So this is recurring cycles in a single day. So it can be like a 90-minute sleep cycle. It can also be fluctuations in our alertness or focus. So like when you think of the Pomodoro technique, the 20 minutes, this can be part of ultradian rhythm. We all have a different one, but that's the ultradian. The second is the circadian rhythm. So this is about 24 hours. The cycle is approximately 24 hours, and it synchronizes sleep, alertness, hormone production, and other day and night functions. So a lot of the systems that we have in society and our workplaces are really designed around the circadian rhythm. This is great for male physiology. It's going to be a little bit different for female physiology, which sits more on the infradian rhythms. So this includes the menstrual cycle. These are monthly cycles. Men also have them, but they're not as strong as the circadian. So this is around a 28-day hormonal cycle that regulates reproductive processes. It influences physical, emotional, as well as cognitive states and our energy levels. And then the last is our circannual or a seasonal rhythm. So this is a cycle that adjusts mood, metabolism, and energy according to changing seasons and daylight throughout the year. So all of these show up for all of us. Where they show up more depends on your physiology. So we're going to drop into the body and explore these 4 energy rhythms that are happening right now. So if you've got your piece of paper or like your notes you're taking on your computer, we'll pull that up. If you're drawing, you can like actually draw out what's on the screen right now, like the lines just listing ultradian, circadian, infradian, or circannual, or we can just write it down as we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the ultradian. So your shorter focus cycles. So just take a moment to, if it helps, you can close your eyes. If you want, you can keep it open, but just kind of drop into where you're at right now. What's your mental clarity like? Does it feel sharp and focused or foggy and maybe a little bit more scattered? So if you've got kind of this horizontal line, it could be like needing rest, building focus at peak focus, or focus is starting to fade. And you might be somewhere in between the two, right? Or in between two. So you might be in between building focus and peak focus. Then we're going to go into circadian. So this is the 24-hour rhythm. So just feel into your energy level again right now. Not where you think you should be, but where you actually are. So where are you sensing, or what do you sense in terms of energy in the body? Like, are you feeling heavy limbs, or are you feeling more alert and light? And just notice the quality of aliveness, right? So circadian is really that wake up, kind of peak energy. We have that dip and the wind down. And for each person, this can be different. So just because you wake up at 7 a.m. doesn't mean someone else does. We won't go into that right now, but just kind of noticing, where am I? And then we'll move into the infradian. So your monthly cycle, this is for everyone. I don't know if there's salusified rhythms as in dance. I've never heard of that, but just a good question. Yeah. So we'll go into the infradian now, your monthly cycle. So this is for everyone, whether you menstruate or you don't menstruate. So just bring attention to your pelvis right now, your core, maybe your deeper belly. Just notice, what's the energy quality there today? Are you feeling more reflective, more creative, more expressive, or maybe more releasing? And releasing connects to slowing down, a bit of hibernation. Just notice where you might be in your monthly wave. And then we'll go into the last one, the circannual, so your seasonal rhythm, really connecting to your relationship to the time of the year. So is your body wanting to contract inwards, conserve, or is it wanting to expand outward and express, right? Thinking winter rest, hibernation, or spring blooming and growth, or maybe full energy in summer, or again, that's starting to slow down in fall harvest. Just mark where you are on your yearly cycle. And so just take a moment to keep breathing. Maybe look at what you've marked for each one of these 4 energy rhythms. Try to stay in the body. Don't analyze in the brain, but just noticing, what do you see when, or what do you experience when all of these rhythms are happening simultaneously? What is your body telling you about how they're interacting with each other right now? Maybe they're aligned and supporting each other. Maybe it feels like they're pulling in different directions. Just noticing. No need to change or fix anything. Just recognizing we're multirhythmic. We don't have just one rhythm. We have multiple at any given time. And so this is the foundation for how we design a life that actually aligns with our natural energy. So we're going to move into our next activity of, what do I actually do with this? Right? Like, we've connected into the body. We've identified our energizers and drainers, connected into the body. Notice how these different rhythms might be showing up. One thing I will say, if you haven't done a lot with connecting into the body and you're not noticing things, that's totally okay. That's completely normal. But the more you connect in with the body, the more you'll start to notice these rhythms showing up, or different physical sensations showing up. So I just want to mention that in case if that's something that you haven't spent a lot of time with yet. So we're going to move into our top 3 energizers and our top 3 drainers. So going back to your matrix that you filled out, or maybe it's already top of mind for you, What are my top 3 energizers? What are the things that give me life? What are the things that expand my energy? And what are the top 3 drainers? What depletes me? What makes me feel like contracted, right? Going back, wanting to go into that iceberg state maybe a little bit, or into fight or flight state where we're really contract. So just write them down, trust what comes up, allow the gut feeling we talked about earlier to guide you more than the mind. Maybe I'll put on a little music too for us. So we'll just spend a couple minutes on this to jot down the top 3 for each. Okay, so we'll just start wrapping up. If you don't have them all yet, that's okay as well. You can always come back to them after the session. All right, so we are going to move into the timeline that we just did, or kind of like, these timeline marks that we had, if you were able to draw it out. If not, that's okay. But just kind of imagine them. How do they map out? And so for your top energizers, just asking yourself, like, when would these feel most natural for me? So if you're a morning person, maybe your creative work is best early in the day. Or if you're in your seasonal expansion phase, maybe social energizers feel right? More outreach happens right now. And then also the flip for the drainers, right? When are you most resourced to handle them? So I think, like, when I have to have difficult conversations, when can I really show up and feel like I have the energy for that, right? Not only the mental sharpness, but like where I can emotionally hold that space for that other person, for myself. Right? We're not going to probably do it in our energy dips. So just take a few minutes. We'll take another few minutes of just thinking about, when would I bring in these energizers and drainers during my day? And this also extends into month or season. All right, so we'll just start to wrap up any notes you've jotted down. So for example, I'll give a couple examples for mine. So for when I think about my energy rhythm for Pleiadian, so during ovulation is best for me to have conversations then. So for female physiology, it's a great time where I can like reach out to more people or do presentations or something like that. For exercise, for example, that gives me a lot of energy, and I need it around wake time in my circadian, but it also changes seasonally. So in spring, running is the thing that gives me energy. Once we move into fall and winter, it's the thing that drains me. So I actually shift the type of exercise that I do. So just some subtleties of how this might shift depending the month, the day, the season. So we'll leave that there. You can continue. Like, I think, like I said, today we're going to touch on a lot, but you'll probably want to go deeper after. But the one thing I really want you to walk away with today is commitment to action. I wouldn't be a coach if I didn't have a commitment to action piece. So what I would like you to do is choose one energizer to add, right? So this could be something you do, but maybe you want to do it more often, or just a little bit more. Maybe it's just 5% more. But what is one energizer that I want to add, and when do I want to add it? What time of day, what time of month, what type of, like, when I'm in my focus periods, right? That ultradian, that shorter cycle. And then what's one small energy drain that I want to reduce or get rid of? And by reduce, I mean, maybe this is shifting it to a time of day where you can manage it more effectively. Maybe it's how can I do less of it? Because some things, like, we have to do. Like, if you have a kid, you still have to feed your kid. You can't be like, sorry, I don't have the energy. No food today, right? So just kind of thinking through, like, how can I start to do this in a way that maybe aligns with my energy a little bit better than it does. So for me, an example I would have is, like, I'll take a 10-minute walk at 2 p.m. After I finish my lunch. I kind of get this dip, so it's nice to have a little bit of movement, but gentle movement, and sunlight. Like, sunlight's a huge piece for me. And then I'll reduce email checking by turning off my notifications, or setting up blocks to check it only 3 times a day. Yeah, about your commitments? There's a size couple? Okay. I'm just trying to be conscious of time, so I don't want to rush us, but I want to make sure we get through the last bits. So let's do it. You're going to hear this a lot from me. Let's do another body check. So I want you to read your commitments to yourself. If you've only got one or it's in the process, that's fine. But just read it to yourself, and I want you to feel the commitment in your body. Does it create expansion or contraction? So if you're noticing some expansion, that probably means, like, yeah, this could align well. This is a good indicator. And then you can start to notice it when you try out the commitment. How is the body responding? if you're noticing more of a contraction, right, where we hold tight, where we tense, or it just like kind of feels heavy, two things could be happening. One, it might not be the commitment for you. So maybe it's not aligned with what you actually need. Or you've just found what I call an edge, which is probably based on a limiting belief or some kind of fear. And so just, noticing like, is this contraction actually protecting me? Which is this actually isn't going to help me, or is this like something that's limiting me? And so just noticing that there's nothing you need to do with it per se. Right now, it's just noticing how the body's responding. And then from there, you can choose if you want to adjust your commitments. Cool. So yeah, just if there's anything coming up that you want to jot down or finish shutting down, we're going to start to come to a close. Right? We've done the checking in of our energy audit, what energizes, what drains us, both inside and outside of work across the 12 dimensions. We've also looked at what is the timeline for these different rhythms? When do we want to add energizers or tackle drainers or remove drainers? So starting to understand how these 4 different rhythms show up. Then there's the commitment to adding one energizer or making it a little bit bigger, and then removing a drainer or finding a time that we can tackle it. And then lastly was checking in with the body. So these are 4 tools that you can use at any given time as you start to build more around energy and life design. Pardon me. So we have time. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. I want to make sure we have time for any questions or conversation. This week, moving forward, what do we do? We've got the commitments, minimize or eliminate one small energy drain, pick one energizer to add or to expand upon in your routine. How do we keep doing that to build into the month? So how do I set a boundary to protect myself from my number one energy drain? How do I find one way to increase my number one energizer maybe by 20%? And then how do we continue to take these small steps? So this like rolls into the quarter of like, how do I make one bigger change? My energy drains. What do I minimize? What do I remove? And how do I bring one bigger change of more top energizers into my life? So the way that I like to think about it is we're not trying to fix everything today. The goal is building a small practice and experimenting where you start to design your days around your energy. So a little bit about like Maria, what you talked about, like alignment with a cost. I like to think about it like, how can we, there are things that we give up when we make change, right? There's always some kind of sacrifice, but there's also gain. And how can we do it in a way that feels good, that feels more gentle versus forced? Because if we force it, we're going to be going back into that like fight or flight or freeze or shutdown state. So that's a little bit about moving forward. I'll share it. You'll have access to this afterwards, so you can look at the slide deck after. But I'd really just like to use maybe the next few minutes for any questions, comments, reflections, takeaways that you would like to share with the group or open up with the group. Also move your faces back to the center so I can see your face right in front of me versus on the side.
One thing that I started to think like is the seasonal changes specifically after like moving from actual 4 seasons countries to 1 season or mono season.
Yeah.
And just thinking about that, like how that actually does impact in some way. And like moving from eternal summer to now to winter, which for me is not really winter, and then going back to summer, and like how that energy, when you never have the actual natural, the autumn or the winter, the slowing down doesn't really exist. Like
Yeah.
it's interesting. I don't really have an answer or question related to that, but that was the first time I actually thought about like how that seasonality or lack of it also probably just plays into like the energy flow of how things don't have the same kind of rhythm that they do in
Yeah.
places where you do have 4 seasons, and it does impact all of those things, and you maybe get more rest during winter, etc. It's really
Yeah.
interesting to kind of consider that as well.
Yeah. I mean, that would also be a really fun observation of just kind of tracking month to month, like what you're noticing if you do see shifts or if you don't see shifts. And it also brought up the question for me of, because I haven't lived in a place where it's eternally summer, so I don't know either. And I haven't read about like that aspect. So I don't know if there's anything that's really been studied specifically for or like a mono season place. But I was like, oh, I wonder how much society then influences the seasonal, right? Like, what are the holidays that shift the ebbs and flows? Because Barcelona, it's a very mild season. And so we do have winter, we do have spring, we do have fall, but it's very different in terms of duration and the amount that we have and when it happens. So I was thinking like, yeah, I notice a lot of my energy also shifts according to like when everything shut down because there's a holiday. But there's a holiday that's like a week long in spring, but everything slows down. So also maybe there's a question of like, what is it with the season, the seasonality, both in terms of nature as well as society and like the culture and the practices that revolve around the season.
Yeah. And I guess the society is the relational part of it, because like every single one
Yeah.
of us is gonna have a different, map of all of this. So
Yeah.
like how do you work with that as well? It's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I love that one. I haven't thought of that one. Yeah. Anything else, or should we start wrapping up? I mean, I'm aware of time, so I'm kind of like looking to you to guide a bit. Ooh, I've got one. From Bridget. I've been struggling on how to plan my day as my tasks and commitments shift right in the middle of the seasonal shift right now, summer to autumn. Definitely have a more clear guide to work with my rhythms and how they shift with change. Cool. Yeah. And I think like a big piece of this, if you do menstruate and you notice, like I have some like female clients I work with who take different or like are on some kind of the word is escaping me, but like where they don't have like a normal menstruation cycle. So their energy shifts, or they have PCOS. So their energy also shifts. But one thing I would think about is like there's the seasonal, but for you as a female, if you're menstruating, how might you start with maybe the month first and then reverse engineer it into to like what does my week look like? So when we think of bleeding, this is like low energy going inward. When we think of follicular, this is before, like after bleeding, before we ovulate, we start to get a lot more energy. So that tends to be a really good time for like pushing projects forward and creativity and like this expansiveness. Ovulation tends to be like a great period for yeah, expressing. So connecting with people and talking more, doing presentations. And then luteal is where we start to slow down a little bit more. We tend to start to go inward more. And it's really good for like those mundane tasks, those things that maybe we don't love, but it's like, hey, I can match my energy here in doing these. So maybe something to think about too for you is how could I start to bring that in first and then notice how the seasonal is showing up too, because I find for women that tends to be the most prominent one. Yeah. Yeah, you're very welcome. I love this topic. I think it's so cool. And I think also like as a woman, I went through like a lot of this of how do I design my work life around my energy, especially my menstrual cycle energy rhythm, and it completely shifted everything and nobody noticed. So I think it's like we go from this like 24-hour of like, this is the work day, this is how I do it. And it can be very draining depending where you are in your cycle, and how you experience your cycle. And then once you shift it, it's like, oh, everything's still getting done. I feel a lot better. Nobody's noticing. Like for me, it was a huge unlock because I think sometimes there's this pressure we have of I have to get this done today. And it's like a lot of the time we don't. So what happens if we just manage expectations and set boundaries better so that we can really be like in alignment with that energy? I really like this topic because I think it's such a fascinating one that's not really talked about that much in the workplace, especially. Yeah. Cool. Well, we're at time. If any of you have questions, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to connect. I don't know. Will you send something out after Maria? Because I can share like my
Yeah.
link, like you have my LinkedIn and I'll share a link
Yeah.
to this slide deck so people can always reference it and look at it.
Yes, amazing. And yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. And they was asking about the recording. Yeah, there's definitely, I feel like all of the exercises would take like a bunch of time to dive into and really look at. Thank you so much, Rachel. This has been really eye-opening and expansive. Loved it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll share everything in an email. Right after
Okay.
this, you'll get a link to all of the things. And also, yeah, follow Rachel. She has great content on LinkedIn. Do you share content in other places as well?
So
Mostly
I'm
LinkedIn.
actually kind of stopping LinkedIn, decided I don't like social media. I mean, I'm not kind of, I
Brainer.
know I don't like social media. And one
Yeah.
of my energy alignments is I'm actually removing
Yeah.
myself from the majority of. So
Mm.
Substack will be my main. And
Mm.
so that's where I'll share that link. Obviously, we can connect on LinkedIn, but I'm not on LinkedIn regularly anymore. And I will not be posting regularly anymore because I want to do more
Yeah.
long form stuff like this. To me, this is like the energizing thing.
Yeah.
So posting
I
for me
love
is
that.
very draining. So there's another example of aligning. So yeah, I can
Amazing.
share that link and then with the slide deck so
Yeah.
people can find me. And then also LinkedIn because we can always connect there. And I still check in like once or twice a week normally. Yeah.
Amazing.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone. And I know Binay
Yeah.
is active on Substack as well, so definitely we'll share that link so we can all follow each other. Thank you, everyone, for
Okay.
joining. Yeah, any questions that come, feel free to always share. Thank you. I'll see you all
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.